Welcome to What If, a Denver Gazette video series that will take a look at the biggest what ifs in Colorado sports history. I'm your host, Chris Schmaedeke, and today I am joined by Denver Gazette sports editor Paul Klee. Paul, how's it going?
Good, Chris. Looking forward to this, man. I love this idea.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really exciting thing to talk about. So today's topic is one that you and I have talked about in the office, one that I think I've talked about with my brothers, my friends, everybody. What if the Denver Broncos had hired Kyle Shanahan in 2017? So a little background on this topic before we dive in. Of course, the Broncos win Super Bowl 50 with Gary Kubiak as head coach. Gary Kubiak comes back the next season. They go 9-7 after Peyton Manning retires. At the end of that season, Gary Kubiak decides to step down due to health reasons and other reasons with the team. So the Broncos have a coaching search. They have three candidates that are interviewed by then GM, and maybe he was president then. I'm not sure. John Elway, I don't remember. Those three candidates are Chief Special Teams Coordinator Dave Toub, Dolphins Defensive Coordinator Vance Joseph, and a name that rings true to all Broncos fans' heart, Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan is, of course, the son of legendary Broncos head coach Mike Shanahan. Kyle was the offensive coordinator in Atlanta. The Falcons went to the Super Bowl that year. Matt Ryan won the MVP that year. So he was a hot coaching candidate. If Kyle Shanahan would have been hired here are a few names that could have been on his staff. Matt LaFleur was his quarterback's coach in Atlanta. Could Matt LaFleur followed him to Denver? Possibly. Mike McDaniel, Colorado's own, who's now the Dolphins head coach, seemed to follow Kyle wherever he went. I was not quite sure what his job was in Atlanta, but I think he was there. And also, the defensive coordinator could have been Robert Saleh, who is now the head coach of the New York Jets. And I mentioned LaFleur earlier. He is now the Packers head coach. So instead, John Elway and the Denver Broncos decided to hire Vance Joseph. That didn't go well. Vance Joseph came with little experience and some baggage and was fired after 2 seasons. So, Paul, I ask you, what if the Denver Broncos hire Kyle Shanahan in 2017?
That's such a loaded question. Well, a lot of heartburn and heartbreak could have been avoided on the Front Range. I think it's worth going back to looking at the interview process and why they did what they did. It's there's a stretch there, and we're still in it, where so many decisions at Broncos HQ were nonsensical. They just didn't make any sense. Look at the end of that 2016 season. So when they're looking for a new coach, they go 2-4 down the stretch. And if you remember, they were very much in the playoff hunt until then. Now, the issue was in 3 December games, they scored 10 points, 3 points, and 10 points.
Well, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. So that's not that different from what we're seeing now. So getting back to how it doesn't make sense is you think, all right, well, that's a team that needs to score points because that's 23 points in 3 games, and that's called a good half in Kansas City. So they went out and got a defensive coach. The reasoning behind that I was given at the time was the Broncos had struggled dealing with adversity. And they felt that Vance Joseph was a guy who would be a day-to-day guy. He would be I don't want to say a John Fox type, but they really valued each day. It was, we got a problem. How do we fix it tomorrow? How do we get better? It was a very short-sighted way of thinking, I believe. And when Vance hired for the job, he gave all the right answers. He answered, there were 5 guys, is what I was told, in the room for that interview with Kyle Shanahan. It was Elway, it was Ellis, it was Matt Russell, Patrick Smythe, and Mark Taves. So they had 5 in there. I'm assuming, educated assuming here, that Elway and Ellis did most of the, questions. They had did most of the talking. They decided against hiring Kyle Shanahan. I'm told not because of his dad, that was not part of the consideration. They did not hire him because of his dad. They were fine with Mike being back in the building. So, and a lot of this comes from, I have to say, comes from a great late friend, Les Shapiro, who was obviously very close with Mike. They watched a lot of football together. And so he gave me a lot of this stuff, and I really miss Les. I want to say that. But yeah, right now, Kyle Shanahan's your coach. You still have him. I think you probably have Josh Allen at quarterback. There's a lot to support that idea because the next year, of course, you may have Patrick Mahomes, Chris. You very well may, because the 49ers showed last year that operation is willing to jump up in the draft. You know, they traded the house, they traded the farm to get up for the kid from Liberty. Malik, was it Willis? Is that right?
Trey Lance.
Trey Lance, that's right. They go up to 3, all the way to 3. Now they're probably going to trade up if they liked Patrick Mahomes, do something like the Chiefs did. You know, they moved up to 10 to get him. So there's a lot of what ifs here, and none of them are going to make Broncos fans feel very good.
Yeah, that's the thing is I think when I researched this topic, the staff that he could have brought is what was amazing to me, because the Broncos, I mean, Vance Joseph had 2 offensive coordinators his 2 years he was here, right? Because it was Musgrave and McCoy. So I think Kyle Shanahan definitely would have brought a stability to this organization that has been missing since they won the Super Bowl in 2015.
Right. And you avoid these, annual questions about whether the coach is coming back, which it's almost like the coaching hire equivalent of writing Broncos games now, that you're finding different ways to explain why they're so bad. The coaching hires have been like that as well. They've got to get this next one right. The quarterback angle here is as big as the coach.
Yes.
To me, because you have, you take Garrett Bowles in 17. That's the year that you would have hired Kyle Shanahan, and Mahomes is there at 10. Who knows if they liked him as much as Kansas City did, but as we've seen in San Francisco, Kyle Shanahan will make a play for a quarterback that he loves. He's like his dad in that way. And then in 18, you take Bradley Chubb with Josh Allen still on the board. I think of all the what ifs, the one that perplexes me and probably will until the end of my days is the Josh Allen question. You know, the Broncos went up there to watch him. They went to a pro day. They scouted him with the Pokes. And to me, you watch him play. I mean, if that's not an Elway clone, there never has been one. Right. So I would imagine if Kyle Shanahan's your coach and Josh Allen is there, a player like that is there, there's a very good chance he's playing in Denver right now.
Well, I don't think this video is going to make Bronco fans feel any better about the current situation, but the Josh Allen thing will always eat at Broncos fans. And, so here's the other question that I want to ask you before you go. Kyle Shanahan's here. Josh Allen's here. Does this team have another Super Bowl?
I think they play in one.
Yeah.
I think they play in one.
They're a legit contender for most of those years, probably.
I think you're always in the conversation. I think it takes you back to the Elway years where do you have the best team every year? Of course not. But it's like the Chiefs. You're never not going to be in that conversation. Everybody's going to be nervous about hosting you in a playoff game, even if you're a wild card. He makes people nervous. We just saw it last week. Yeah. So it's very similar to that in that it would be very hard to be bad with a Josh Allen. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and the Robert Saleh thing, it was another thing or I wonder is Vic Fangio a defensive coordinator under Kyle Shanahan? That could have been a possibility as well, instead of him being the head coach here.
Right. Yeah. I think you make such a good point on the staff. That's not something really that's considered a lot, but I think we've seen it with this operation now that the staff is so important. And this is such an inexperienced staff that they had to reach outside of the staff to bring in some experience. Kyle Shanahan, he knew ahead of time that he needed that sort of thing, on either shoulder. He had pretty good coaching coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good. And, he's been in the Super Bowl with the Niners this year. I mean, I don't know what they do with Brock Purdy at quarterback now, but they got a real chance this year too. And that they've had their ups and downs. I know his record's right around 500, but I think the answer to this question is the Broncos would be in a lot better place if they would have hired Kyle Shanahan in 2017.
Yep. It's got to be on the short list, Chris, of most perplexing what ifs when you consider the lineage and the bloodlines and the familiarity with him of bypassing for not only a first-time coach, but an unproven guy, that his defenses had not been phenomenal. This was not a can't miss guy. So that, along with the Josh Allen question, I think is going to tickle Broncos fans for a very long time.
For sure. All right, Paul, thanks for coming on. This is the first episode of this video series. We hope to have one every week with different guests, different topics. So make sure you go to denvergazette.com to see these videos, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Chris.